Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined as always by my good buddies Richard
Hello.
and Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael are joining me in my kitchen for a nice chat and a discussion and a deliberation of a variety of different topics. But this time we are discussing the Mount Rushmore of Mercurial talents. It was Richard's choice. Explain yourself, Richard. Mercurial people, Mercurial talents, Mount Rushmore, Mercurial something. Why did you choose it, Richard?
Because there were a couple of people who I thought of. The phrase came up, and I just sort of thought that's a very interesting thing. Just like people who are very talented, but the talent comes and goes.
Yeah. Oh,
and
okay.
Sometimes,
Right.
So that got me thinking about this.
I was interested to see whether the choices where the Mercurial applies to their gift, or more broadly to them as an individual. So that's
Could be
Yeah,
both.
I am.
Could be both.
I had an initial list that felt then I had to look up what Mercurial, the definition was. I was like, oh, I don't understand what this means. So I had been revised to a more Webster's dictionary version of it. So boy, this is a tough one for Jeff to figure out at the end. We'll see.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, I think people who have mercurial talents that often come and go are also the type of people who are mercurial in terms of being very passionate and have tempers. So the two sort of, I think, go hand in hand in a lot of ways.
Oh, cool. This will be interesting to discuss. So Richard chose it, so Michael starts.
Okay. My first choice is Irvin Magic Johnson.
Oh, wow.
I thought of him as someone because I was thinking of things.
Hold on, guys. Hold on. You guys are breaking up. I know you guys can hear me, but you guys are like really breaking up for me. I'm gonna restart my computer and hop out and hop back in. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Mercurial.
Okay. My internet connection is being very mercurial right now. So let me go ahead and do that. I'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
How's Felix doing?
See how I chased him away.
Yeah.
My first pick, and he went running to the hills. Oh no!
He's got to redo his
too
list.
good. What's going on?
He's got to redo his list. What's Felix up to?
He is, on the edge of Halloween. Last week he chose his costume. Ever since the beginning of the year, it's been Spider-Man. I'm going to be Spider-Man. He has a Spider-Man costume. He's all in on Spider-Man. About a month ago, I'm going to be Wolverine. Okay. All right.
Oh, wow.
Last weekend, we're walking through Target, and he chooses like a Halo video game character costume for a game that he has never played. And that's what he's going with. It's out of packaging. I said, let's sit on it for a week. I'll hold on to the receipt. I don't I didn't say it, but I don't really trust you. So he's going to be like this Halo character with just like this mask and
that's a video game.
Whatever. Yeah.
Halo. Okay.
Yeah. He played it one time at a friend's birthday party at an arcade, and like, what are you going to do with that? Is he going to look back on it in 10 years and be like, what was I doing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Do you think, is there somebody in his life who he's trying to connect with or impress, or do you think?
I don't know. I honestly think it was just, he saw it and it looked cool.
Okay.
And that's it. There doesn't need to be any more
discussion,
rhyme or reason to it. It's just like, I like this. I want to dress up as this.
Well,
fine. All good. But he's doing good. He's doing some kind of swim classes where he's kind of he knows how to swim and everything, but he's kind of like learning how to swim better.
He's trying to learn why to swim.
That's very funny. Like learning strokes and how to do like the dolphin kicks. And
oh, that's great.
swim underwater better. And
I wish I would have learned that. because it's so good for you. It's like the healthiest thing you can do.
Yeah, he loves it. He loves swimming, and these lessons are like 20 minutes long. Boom, he goes in, he's done. It's an activity that he does on a weekend. So
that's cool.
All right, Richard, let's see if
let's see if this holds up.
Okay.
My Mercurial internet connection.
Okay, so Richard chose it. So Michael, you go first.
My first choice is the all-star basketball player, Earvin Magic Johnson. And I think this kind of goes hand in hand with kind of how I kind of started to kind of read the definition of it, because he was so quick in specifically like his passing ability and his ability as this really big dude. Like, I think people forget that. I mean, all basketball players are what, 6 feet and above, sometimes. But he was like a big guy. He was what, like 6'9"?
Yeah, he was like 6'9", yeah.
But like also like he was he's a thick boy. He was like as wide as he was big, but he was very fast and very nimble. And I think that he was one of these athletes that his quickness as a passer, as an athlete, was really interesting to watch. And I'm just a sucker for anytime that there's like one of those like 3.5 minute videos of like all of his passing, all like any sort of compilation of him just like doing ridiculous things. I'm a sucker for the way that he would do no look passes and look off a defender and almost have like this kind of whimsy about how he plays. And I think that he has like just this quick-witted nature of how he plays the game for a man his size, and just very interesting to watch. And I thought you don't often see that with guys of his size and nature.
Sure. I mean, I was a big Lakers fan growing up, and Magic was my favorite player. And it was just, there was an aspect of you watched the Lakers because you might see Magic do something you've never seen anyone do before.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of some sort of crazy no-look 3/4 court bounce pass to somebody who's barely open. There was an element to him of you literally never knew what you were going to get from game to game, because he might do something. He was capable of doing things that almost literally no other player in NBA history was capable of doing. Just because of, like you said, his combination of his size and his agility and his court vision and his ability to put a pass on a dime. And just the fun that he brought to the court. It always looked like that he was, I think we included him on our Mount Rushmore of smiles that could light up a room / $1 million smiles. He just always looked like somebody who was having fun out there, and it was infectious. And so that was another reason why I became very much a Lakers fan and very much a Magic Johnson fan.
Is he featured in that HBO? Oh, it's called Showtime.
It's called Showtime, yeah.
Yeah. That does. When I think of Mercurial, definitely the definition of an athlete who has different modes to play in, and different unpredictability seems to fit within the description of a mercurial person. But within that, also his competitive nature, I think, helped him hold his own with a guy like Larry Bird, whose trash talking, aggressive game is kind of legendary. He's there to play the mind games as well as the physical game too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Cool choice. Richard, what is your first one?
I will stick in the realm of sports, and where I frequently hear the term mercurial talent, and we're all going to stumble over that word today, so let's just get that out of the way. Mercurial. That's a very hard word to say. Anyway, where I first heard that word a lot was in soccer, and oftentimes it's used to describe someone who can score 3 goals one game, and then the next you forget that he's even on the pitch because he's nowhere to be seen, not contributing at all. And the personal player that I remember hearing that about a lot, and then became somebody who I wound up following a lot because he was the first star player for my favorite team, was Carlos Vela from Los Angeles Football Club. Now, he is somebody, Mexican soccer player, started out at Arsenal, went to Real Sociedad in Spain, and was just always known to be incredibly talented, had this super gifted left foot, could hit shots from outside the box into the top corner of the net, pretty much whenever it felt like whenever he wanted to. But the question with him is always, did he really want to? Did he have the passion and the interest in soccer to go out there and do it every game and do it in practice and do the things you needed to do to be able to perform during the game? And it's interesting because he even has said that soccer is not his favorite sport. His favorite sport is basketball. He loves basketball. And that was one of the reasons he actually came from Europe to Los Angeles to play with LAFC, was because he could get to go to Lakers games.
Wow.
So that was always the question of motivation with him. You know, is he someone who doesn't, if you're someone who doesn't love soccer and it's just passionate about it, and it's not that Danny Rojas football is life thing, are you ever going to be a great talent? And then he came to LAFC and just killed it for the entire time he was there with the team. And he's back with the team now after taking most of this season off. But it's his 2019 season. He had like 34 goals and 15 assists in 38 games. And it was just pretty much almost guaranteed that you were going to show up and you were going to see him do something incredible almost every game. And for whatever reason, when he came to LA, it clicked. Maybe it was because he didn't have the pressure of playing in Europe. Maybe it was because he was going to Lakers games and he was happy to be able to do that. I don't know what the reason was. But maybe it's because there's MLS and not teams in Europe and the quality wasn't nearly as high. I don't know the answer to all of that. Could be any number of those things. But for whatever reason, he went from being somebody who would score an amazing goal for Arsenal and then go 3 or 4 games where you barely even noticed he was playing, to somebody who literally carried, especially that 2019 season, carried LAFC to be maybe the best team the league had ever seen. And that's really my definition of what Mercurial means in terms of an athlete.
I'm fascinated. Like, do we in observing, I mean, I'm not sure where the Mercurial came from. Is it Greek mythology or?
Yeah, it's from Mercury.
Yeah, and I think of like
Todd Mercury. Yeah.
Yes,
but like
the Mercury.
I've always been fascinated by people who have achieved a celebrity or visibility or a talent that makes them the center of attention for that gift, and then sometimes they don't want to do it. Like they don't even like that much, because there's so many people who are obsessed with doing that at a high level of skill and at a high level of acclaim. And so for someone to be crabby about it,
right, or not appreciate it.
Yeah,
that's the thing. It's like, how many of us have said, God, I would kill to have a quarter of the talent that X has, this guy.
Yeah.
And you would always feel like, boy, if I was that talented, I'd be at practice every day and I'd be doing whatever I took to get even better. And that's not always the way these people that if you have that talent, that's not always the way you think. Sometimes it's just, I have this talent and I guess I'm going to do the thing that makes me successful because this is what I'm talented at. Maybe I don't love it, but it's the skills that I was gifted with. Yeah. And that's what I'm going to do.
Are there country singers on any of your lists?
There could have been, or not, but there could have been.
Okay. I think the last season of Cocaine and Rhinestones was about George Jones, and
that's what I was thinking of when you said
that. An individual who's called by like Frank Sinatra as like the best popular music vocalist. Somebody who had incredible acclaim But then that acclaim became, on top of their substance issues, compounding the pressure on them to show off that gift at its highest level every time they performed. So he
Right.
became No-Show Jones, partly because of his substance problems, but those substance problems were in a way to try to defeat the enormous performance pressure that he felt to do the thing that everybody wanted him to do all the time. So that's it's fascinating to me how we look at it as like a lottery ticket. Like you, it's almost like, for us it looks like the joy and the pleasure of having a winning lottery ticket every time you go to do the thing that you want to do. But for them, it's just it can be a burden and a torturous thing. So
yeah, it seems like it's a sliding scale. It's almost like the easier it comes for some people, the less they appreciate it, or the less they want to hone it and make the most out of it.
yeah, I can
Interesting.
really see that. All right, Michael, what's your second choice?
My second choice is Robin Williams, actor,
wow.
comedian, a person who certainly I'm still sticking with the speed thing is what is really the Mercury aspect of this Mercurial town thing is what I'm really hung up on or stuck to within my choices. And what is fascinating about him is, like, his brain just seems to have worked differently. And ultimately, I think it was one of the kind of demons as well that kind of led to him taking his own life, almost a decade ago. I don't know if it's longer than that, but or right around then. But here's a guy that is just like what we're all talking about. Like, he's supremely talented and gifted, and what he's supremely talented and gifted at doing is like this, just being quick on the draw with impersonations, with jokes, he has an ability to riff and go off on tangents that no other person has ever really operates in his way. He's so expansive in how he thinks about a certain situation. He's like this pure ball of like improv energy that just gets released, and it's just crazy. And how do you think like that? Obviously, again, another guy who dealt with drug abuse, another guy who dealt with a lot of mental issues and depression, but a guy that could also like switch it off and be an incredible like dramatic actor too, that you don't often think about. I mean, even though you think of Robin Williams, or I do, and you think of like zany, wacky comedian on stage, and then, but he had half of his life spent doing these really like intense dramatic roles that would often weirdly like sometimes switch into that too. He'd still have like this manic side, but he is someone that would go in like all directions at once. And I don't know, it's just very very one of one. What do they say, like in sports at least, like a unicorn, in that sort of, there's no one like him, and there probably won't be anybody like him because of how he was wired. And yeah
he if you ever listen to comedians from like the 70s, stand-up comedians who worked with him, or like contemporaries of Robin Williams, and hear them talking about like when Robin Williams first started working like at the Comedy Store and places like that. I know Letterman talked about this after Robin Williams died, and he gave kind of an on-air sort of eulogy about him. And he said basically, Robin Williams first got on stage and all the other comedians looked at each other and said, well, we're done. It's over.
Yeah.
This guy has just taken whatever we do and just blown it completely out of the water. It was that much of a seismic shift in terms of, back in the 70s, there's a lot of these sort of observational comedians, and think about like Leno and those sort of guys who were kind of coming up, and Letterman and what they were doing. And then you've got Robin Williams, who's just coming out there with this a million miles an hour. Just, it's almost the Zucker, Abrams Zucker sort of thought process of just throw as many jokes and bits and things and stream of consciousness, and let's just go, 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 go. And it was just so different than what anyone else was doing, and so much more, I don't want to say advanced, but on a different thought process, different level, that other comedians just looked at it and said, this guy is just gonna ruin us, basically.
Yeah, I think reading his biography, one thing that I had not realized that he did have a foundation in theater and was going to Juilliard for theater, and the comedy thing was kind of an outreach of trying to find more places to perform, and doing improvisation for the theater, then improvising within like a kind of an evangelist type of character, and having, if you recall some of his earlier stand-up, they had this, he always kind of would riff in this kind of a TV preacher kind of character. So I think when we did see him do dramatic roles, it seemed like a surprise because we knew him at first as a comic, but then not knowing that his part of his training was dramatic. And I agree with you, Richard. I think his most clear precedent might be a guy like Jonathan Winters, but Winters never really had the outside of some talk show appearances, had the platform to do improvisation like Williams did. And yeah, I can't imagine stand-up comedy had quickly evolved from an art form where you just do hack jokes. You don't have to do original jokes. You just do jokes because you're there to bring a stripper out. You're there. You're in between the juggler and the stripper. So nobody's really paying attention. They didn't come there for you. And then to go to a comedy club where people were doing polished jokes after the comedy boom. And then here's this guy who has no material whatsoever. He makes it up on the spot, and there's a different thing every night. And the comics, some of the comics I would hear would complain that Robin was a notorious joke stealer. And Robin would always say, I work in this extemporaneous way where it's just so stream of consciousness that I honestly didn't even know that I stole your joke. I just kind of work. It becomes the fabric of after I heard you do it, it becomes the fabric of my life. And
it's funny to think of that aspect, because I don't think of like Robin Williams as a guy that tells jokes. He's just a guy that's funny, right? Yeah. I can't, you can think of like a quintessential, like, Jerry Seinfeld type joke, or like Jay Leno, as previously mentioned, but like, does Robin Williams tell jokes, or is he just a guy that's just reacting to the audience and the stage, and he happens to see like, a piece of, lint that's like rolling across the stage, and that's like, all right, I can do 7 minutes on whatever this is. I don't know. Is there?
Yeah, he had set material, but you're correct in that it was the brick, but the mortar, which was the improvisation, made up most of the wall. The mortar was the stuff that was the connective tissue of all of it. And yeah, I gotta think that if I was a comic at that point. Oh, they also said that although Robin did steal jokes, he was also the biggest supporter. Like, he was the first to celebrate when a guy like Freddie Prinze would get Chico and the Man, or when the comics started getting TV shows, he was there.
Yeah, and he was one of the first ones to get a TV show. And Letterman actually talked about that when he did his little eulogy of Robin Williams, that Robin Williams was to try to use his big break to try and give a break to his like fellow comedians that he was working with. So he got Letterman an acting gig on Mork and Mindy, even though Letterman famously cannot act to save his life. And in fact, Letterman almost got fired from the gig until Robin Williams basically told the director, no, you're going to work with him and you're going to make this work. And that's just, he saw his success as a way to elevate everyone else in that community.
Yeah. That's the one thing. Special. It was interesting to read this book too, because basically by season 3, there was Mork and Mindy was struggling to stay on the air. I think I think they're struggling to get through production. And I don't know if it was due to Robin Williams' substance issues, but there was an episode where he basically apologizes to the camera for being, impish and out of control. So it's an interesting thing because I think of the Mercurial talents as being something that when others want to control you, when you're a product, when you're a hit, the engine that drives a hit television show, um, there are sponsors, and you're part of you're a product of a corporation in that case, and that they were kind of struggling to control this product or make this product do what they wanted to at that time. So I think that's that point where I imagine the elated corporate executives were pissed off now at this guy at the golden goose is laying eggs that aren't gold right now. Richard, what's your second?
All right, so my second choice, I'll stick with comedians from the 70s who had substance abuse problems. Oh. And John Belushi.
Oh, wow.
Someone who is obviously very good and bad ways connected with Robin Williams, and we won't need to get into that too much. But I watched the Saturday Night movie, the new Jason Reitman film, which I would highly recommend. I think if you're in that sweet spot of you like Saturday Night Live and you know a lot of the skits, but you're not somebody who's like super fan who knows all of the history, this will hit you exactly in the right spot. Because if you know the history, you'll see a lot of the creative license that they took with a lot of the stories and things that happened. You're like, yeah, that didn't happen, and that's actually a story from season 3, and it happened at a party, and it didn't happen the night of the first episode. You'll get wrapped up in that sort of stuff, which I kind of did. But if you're someone who just loves Saturday Night Live and kind of wants to see kind of a fun story about the chaos behind the scenes of making the first episode, it's a good movie.
Jeff, are we sponsored by this movie right now? This is a glowing review.
and the funny thing is, we are sponsored by them, and that's the best I could give. Is it's pretty good.
Okay.
Is that they kind of a little nerdy, I think. So they really played into the idea of him being this sort of coked up diva who has a little bit of the Blutarsky in him. Like a big part of the episode or the movie is him not wanting to sign his contract. And he doesn't want to do the B character because he doesn't want to wear the B ears and get dressed up in the B costume. And I started to think wow, they're really portraying him in a negative light. And then I started thinking about it, and I was like, no, in real life, that's one of the things they got right. They really had problems because he didn't want to dress up in the B outfit because he thought it made him look ridiculous. And oh yeah, they really had to almost couldn't go on air because he wouldn't sign his contract until like 10 minutes before the episode started. Obviously, I mean, John Belushi, an amazing talent, one of the most talented comedians of all time. And what he did on Saturday Night Live, what he did outside of Saturday Night Live, unbelievable. But he was someone who was incredibly difficult to work with. And his substance abuse problems obviously didn't help. But there was something more going on behind that. There was good John and there was bad John. If you were dealing with bad John, you were dealing with a diva. You were dealing with somebody who had to be sort of coddled and pumped up and treated with kind of kid gloves. And if you're dealing with good John, he was somebody who was positive and wanting to work with other members of the cast and pumping them up and working with guest hosts and being positive. And it was just this night and day difference between the two of them. And you start to wonder, you think about the last movies that he made. I think the last 2 movies he made, and check me on this, Jeff, were Continental Divide and Neighbors.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So. I think Neighbors and then Divide was after, I thought.
Okay, maybe it's in that order. I couldn't remember. But the point is, the last two movies he made, he was very definitely playing against type.
Mm-hmm.
In Neighbors, he's the straight man, and Dan Aykroyd is playing the kind of wacky next door neighbor, wild man kind of character. And in Continental Divide, he's playing a very straight man kind of in this romantic comedy. So it does make you wonder if there was an element in him that was getting bored with doing comedy and getting bored with being Bluto Blutarsky all the time. And what would have happened if he would have lived?
Yeah.
Maybe he would have found his inner peace and been able to use that to translate to do who knows what type of work he would have done in the future. Mm-hmm. But the body of work that he left, and it's funny, you watch the old Saturday Night Live full episodes, and they're on Hulu now, I think. And I think we all grew up on the first 5 seasons of Saturday Night Live as watching the reruns for the most part that would air, and they were like the 60-minute edited down versions of them. And when you watch it like that, it makes it seem like every sketch was like almost every sketch was a big hit. But you watch those 90-minute long episodes, man, there's some duds in those sketches. There's some sketches that just don't work. Just like there were sketches in the 80s that didn't work, and in the 90s and 2000s, and just we look at our generation of Saturday Night Live and go, well, there's a lot of sketches here that just don't work. And that wasn't like that back in the old days. It's like, no, it's just our rose-colored glasses kind of remembering it that way. So even within the context of Saturday Night Live, things that John Belushi did weren't perfect. Mm-hmm. But when he was on, man, was he on.
Mm-hmm. It's funny. I think of like old SNL, and I don't remember. I think it was definitely too young to watch stuff from the 70s and into the 80s. But my like main is watching just these best of video cassettes, right? So the same sort of things. Like I would just see the best of Eddie Murphy, and it was great, and everything was funny because it was literally the best of it. It wasn't like you said, like, a third of the sketches just being like, oh, all right. I mean, that's why they're called sketches. They're not fully fleshed out. They're people that are trying things on live TV, and maybe they don't work. But talking about John Belushi made me you made me think about this kind of like SNL wild man character, like Tommy Boy, what was his name? Chris Farley, who I think there's an aspect of him carrying on that kind of John Belushi legacy of being this wild party man. And I think him, like Belushi, probably who knows what he would have gone on to in terms of his roles. Was he always going to play kind of like the jovial giant fat guy wrecking ball type character for the rest of his life? Was he always going to be like pegged in those roles? Was he going to move on? Possible to know because he died too. He overdosed. And I think that the being typecast has got to be tough, especially when you're like just trying to move on, just trying to do other good work. And I don't think I've seen a serious John Belushi movie, but probably because I don't know, just haven't.
Yeah. Watch Continental Divide. It's not bad. It's fine.
Oh, good. Just
this movie sponsored by Continental. This episode sponsored by Continental Divide.
You had the order of his last movies correct, Richard. It was
okay.
Was Continental, then Neighbors. I remember as a kid watching the first season of SNL with my parents. I think it was summer, so I was allowed to stay up late enough. So maybe it was already in reruns, but I remember them laughing, and usually I understood what comedy was, like what the punchline was, but they would be laughing at Belushi just from a raised eyebrow or just from a look on his face. And I think what Belushi and Farley represent as chaos Muppets, because it feels like everybody's either an order Muppet or a chaos Muppet, that's us. That is the subculture has finally made it to television. And so I think they sensed that Belushi was on a kamikaze mission. He was going to either destroy. He was ready to destroy himself to destroy whatever television was or whatever entertainment was, and so I remember the sense that it's not just what this guy does; it's who this guy is. And the Mercurial part was part of that. That he could turn on Jane Curtin, he could turn on anybody. It reminds me of when you watch the Marx Brothers, how they are. We know that they're the Marx Brothers, but they're going to sell each other out at any minute. They're going to subvert the agenda of any of the persons on screen. So that's a fun choice. Okay, so is it true we're at our halftime?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
do a little stretch.
For the Patreon listeners, I think we're behind a few episodes. So we will be recording 100 episodes over the next week to make it up to our subscribers. So don't cancel your subscription. Please don't cancel. We're going to make it up and maybe even be one ahead. And if you want to have other people join, let's just send them a link to the Mount Rushmore podcast, wherever you find it. Our site got spammed again last week. So we're a 3-time award-winning podcast. And so I guess we're back. And Michael, what is your third Mercurial?
My third Mercurial talent is one lead guitarist of the band Spinal Tap. That's right, Mr. Nigel Tufnell.
Nice.
Who, if there's anyone that can rip off a incredible solo in the middle of a song and also incorporate the playing of a violin with his foot at the same time, I can't think of anyone who is more mercurially talented than that man. He is so prone to wild mood swings, to jealousy, to anger, to stupidity. But also, hey, he's a heck of a guitar player too. I love him as a character, obviously. And I think that he is this character portrayed as someone who is like the talented one of the group, but also just so stupid. I mean, they're all stupid.
They're all stupid, yeah.
But Nigel is what did they
special
say?
In a stupid.
He's special in a certain way. But I think that's just the thing that I really like about the movie is that these guys are just these dunderheads. But they're really good at like their music. They're really good at what they do. Like their rock and roll songs are incredible, obviously. And I just love that combination of and when I was thinking of like something, listen, he's no like Magic Hands fast wizard guitarist like Brendan Small or like the guys from like Death Clock or Metalocalypse or whatever, but I just thought of this guy. I just thought of him.
And for those of you who are not watching, we have an Oreo sighting. Just Dog has made an appearance on the video stream.
Jeff likes to put chocolate on the back of his ears to attract his wife and the dog.
Lick my love pump. I know you're a Tap fan. You're wearing a Polymer Records shirt, Richard.
I am. I'm wearing my Polymer Record shirt even.
Oh, really? Oh, huh. Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it was what a quinky dink. Yeah, I mean, obviously someone who has his ups and downs during the course of the documentary. Whether it's his frustrations with the backstage catering or the or the Stonehenge that is 18 inches tall, or some of the other things that happen. I do love the fight that they are having in the studio that winds up breaking them up, basically, which is all about whether or not they can get this one guitar part right. And there's nothing funny about that actual fight. That's one of the few times in the movie where there's no gag there. If you notice, like the one, the thing that actually winds up causing them to split up is not one of these ridiculous sight gags or, the pod not opening or something like that. It's something as simple as them being in the recording studio and one of them not being able to record this intricate guitar part. And I think that just goes to show they took their music seriously, even if they were incapable of actually doing anything other than the music part of it correctly.
What were the references, do you think, at the time? People watch it now and they've seen other documentaries and mockumentaries. I would love to try to track down, like, when people walked into This Is Spinal Tap, the 45 people who probably did in the theaters, like, what had they seen in terms of a rock documentary that they were.
There was probably Gimme Shelter would have been one.
Let It Be.
Was there be? Yeah.
Was there a metal mockumentary or rockumentary or?
I can't think of one. No, I don't think there was like a metal one before.
Interesting. Yeah. We'd seen a lot of those guys interviewed on TV probably, but I would just, it would be so fun to go back in time and to be able to experience that with that audience and understand what the reference is, what their frame of reference is, or around that. Like, I guess, because I wonder, was there a character who was like Nigel, who was temperamental? I think of like George Harrison and Let It Be. He's definitely walking out on it because the production doesn't happen in an efficient way or doesn't recognize his talents and things like that. But all right, okay. Richard, what's your third?
Third one, staying in the realm of music and a band that was equally as cartoonish in their own way as Spinal Tap, and no less Mercurial. The Stone Roses.
Oh, wow.
A band that in the course of their career managed to come out with 2 albums. One of them changed the shape of modern rock music and modern music, and the second one, which kind of sucked. And that was it. That's what you got out of the Stone Roses. Maybe there were a few. They tried to do a comeback back in the 2000s and put out a couple of singles that were okay, and then they started fighting with each other again, and that was it. So the Stone Roses, the kind of keystone band of the Manchester sound, the first self-titled album, is just an amazing album that sounds as fresh and relevant today. I went back and listened to it before before we recorded this episode, and it just sounds great. It's this kind of like atmospheric but still danceable. It's rock. It's got techno elements. It's got all these different things. Soul. It's got all these different elements behind it, and it just works. And it works in ways that you think that it shouldn't work, but it works. And then they wait like 4 or 5 years to come out with their next album, Second Coming. And I remember listening to Second Coming at my college radio station. And we put it on like in the second. Everyone was like really excited to hear it. And we put it on. And you listen to the first track, you're like, okay, that's okay. I'm sure the second track is going to be better. Even better. And the second track would come on, and then the third track. And by the fifth track, it was just like, oh, this is as good as it's going to get, huh? Okay. Huh. And it's not Second Coming is like a bad album, but when you're trying to follow up one of the greatest debut albums of all time, and you make your fans wait 5 years for it, there's going to be some increased expectations. And so not being able to follow through on that, and then breaking up after that, and then years later getting back together, but then not being able to really do much with getting back together and then breaking up again. Man, it just sort of goes to show that some bands, it's a lightning in a bottle situation where they're able to capture it one time and then for whatever reason, I know there were drug issues with Stone Roses, with different band members, and the ego issues, and they had a contract dispute with the label and a lot of other things. But just all of these things conspiring to just make it impossible to follow up on what was, like I said, just an amazing debut album.
Cool. I'm trying to think of other bands like that had like that second album that was just didn't capture what you wanted to, and then kind of went away. I got to give it some thought. I'm not being very mercurial in my quick-witted.
For whatever reason, the first one I thought of, well, Boston, yeah. Counting Crows had a huge first album, and then I don't know what happened with their albums after that.
It's funny. I don't. Was it Liam Gallagher? Who was the roadie for Stone Roses?
Yeah, one of the Gallaghers.
Yeah, and I think their Oasis' second album was basically all written by the time the first one came out. So I almost felt like it was even though they were destined to implode due to infighting and whatnot, it almost seemed like a learned lesson, perhaps, that they carried in by having enough energy or material or whatever to kind of follow, to at least hit their sophomore slump and not or not die as after their first one. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, what's your last choice?
My last choice is based on an experience from this past week.
Oh wow. Your son is very mercurial, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, it's not a person, it's a thing. And the mercurially talented old television remote that used to be able to do things, that used to be able to have buttons on it that you could actually change the channel, rather than whatever the hell I have for my stupid Vizio TV that is so useless. It has it's the simplified thing that is built on using apps. Has no idea how to change a goddamn channel. This thing, it doesn't have like a back button to go back and forth. It has a back button, but it doesn't take you in between channels. You know, like it's a Sunday today, and you could there's two different shows, two different channels that has football on, channel 2 and channel 11. Guess who cannot switch back and forth between goddamn channels on this new remote? This guy. I have to go in, I have to press the center button, which brings up a pop-up menu, which brings me to favorites, where I can tap down and select one of the two channels that I've saved as a favorite. Back in my day, old man yelling at clouds, I was a master of that remote control. It had a back button. It had like the skip. It had like the favorites button. So you could just click, you can choose between the 7 or 8 channels that you'd saved. Like MTV was on there and whatever, ESPN, all the things for it. You could do things with this magic remote control. I have this tray on my ottoman that has a remote for the TV, a remote for the DVD player, or an Apple remote. A remote for we have like this kind of treadmill that we kind of roll out that changes the speed on the treadmill. A remote for the like a light that kind of dims in the corner. I'm so envious of how at some point rich people have like that big remote control that does everything, like the big theater in home. I can do everything on this. It's like I think Tony Soprano had one too, where he was getting something set up on the Sopranos, where he had like this massive thing that could just control everything. And what have we done in our days that we've reduced ourselves to these tiny little useless remote controls? Bring back master remote controls that had power and functionality that I don't know. I think I'm a little off topic, but
I wish you'd done this.
They were talented. The remotes of our youth had power and talent.
I feel like I wish you would done that as Nigel Tufnell. Like, you know.
You're exactly right. This does feel like something.
It doesn't do nothing. It does nothing.
I can't. And if I'm trying to, it's funny. It's fun. If I'm trying to watch football, I got to go here and then I got to hook. But it's not. Look at the size of it. I get on there. It's big. It's this thing. Is this big? And yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'll get through it. It's fine. But no, I was just thinking like how things have been really because of that, because of how people watch TV nowadays, right? Like I barely watch television, and it's only in these instances when I'm watching. When I'm saying I barely watch television, I mean like live TV.
Yeah.
I barely watch like live TV on channel, on ABC or Fox or CBS. It just doesn't happen. Everything is like I'm going to an app and I'm going to navigate within an app and watch Disney Plus with a kid or watch Netflix or whatever. So it's just so funny how when you do need something that can do more and it's just not available, it's just like, oh, what am I doing? What are we doing here? That's all.
I'm always racing. I can watch enough TV. I can sit down in front of the TV long enough to eat my sandwich.
Yeah.
And by the time I'm done with my sandwich, I haven't even gotten to whatever streamer. Like the remote has end of sandwich. Now I gotta get up and go do other stuff. Richard, what's your last one?
My last one is perhaps the definition of mercurial talent for me. Nicolas Cage.
Oh, wow.
Such a mercurial talent that they actually made a movie about his mercurial talent called The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. Just somebody who is capable of being amazing in great movies and is also capable of being absolutely terrible in just the worst dreck you've ever seen in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Someone whose financial placement at the time seems to be directly related to the types of movies he does, performances that he puts out, and just in general, just someone who you cannot rely on from movie to movie to know what Nicolas Cage are going to be.
He's like Richard, he's like a 3 true outcome type ball player, right?
Yes.
He's either going to hit a home run, he's going to strike out, or he's going to kind of walk. So there's an aspect of him where like he does everything, right? He's like one of those characters that will like feels like he'll do everything because he seems so
he's
confident.
He's the Max Muncy of acting, Michael.
he feels so. I bet he's a guy that is so confident that he can find something interesting in any role. It doesn't matter. There's something there. I'm sure that he thinks that that he can speak some truth into the world about whatever that is, even though it's like a
flying dragon movie. Yeah.
Did you see Renfield?
Yes, I did. I think I saw it on a plane or something like that. Yeah.
I finally felt like I don't know if it's Cage needs. I feel like writers are learning to write for Cage and giving him these so much scenery to chew within the purview of the part. So if you give him the part of a vampire, which he's played I think a few times, an over the top diva, full on Dracula character, within the dynamic of that, there are moments where he's subtle. There are moments of that, but it's almost like he needs to be given every instrument in the symphony and be allowed to play all of them at mezzo forte or forte or something like that for him to have these moments of calm and quiet and things where you actually buy it. You real it fits inside the frame.
I don't know if either of you saw the movie Dream Scenario that he was in a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing where he's playing this sort of like schlubby, sort of hapless character.
Yeah.
But then within like the dream aspects of the movie, he gets to play like this over the top, like depending on what part of the movie it's in, either really villainous, awful, or just different aspects of it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a movie that was, again, that's one where I don't feel like it was written for him necessarily, but he was able to tailor, because it was such a good movie, it captured his attention and he put his all into it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I do wonder if what is he the nephew of? He's Carmine Coppola's. He's
kid.
So he's Francis
Ford Coppola's nephew. Yeah.
I always wonder if, like, growing up in the world of movies, like being in Fast Times and Valley Girl and all these things, like early on, just made him kind of almost just bored of doing. And then growing up with a dad who's kind of associated with, cinema and stuff, or an uncle, just made him just kind of think, I'm going to be the David Bowie of acting. I'm going to do these over the top performances, and I'm going to use it as a platform for broadly theatrical things.
The thing that I like about him, that feels very relatable, is he feels like a guy that doesn't know how to spend money very well.
Oh, yeah.
It feels like
he knows how to spend money. He definitely knows how to spend money.
Okay, all right,
good at that.
He just what am I trying to say? He seems like a guy that
doesn't know how to manage his money.
Doesn't know how to manage his money. I like an actor that's acting to keep up with himself.
Yeah,
he has to act.
Yeah,
he has to act because I've made all these bad financial choices over the course of my. He has, like, this huge comic book collection that he's, like, bought and sold multiple times, like or whatever. What an interesting film.
A friend at Disney said his boss was fielding a call from Cage, who was at Sotheby's in London or somewhere, and needed his advance on his National Treasure paycheck, a $4 million advance wired directly to Sotheby's because he had to purchase a Civil War saber. And that's this kind of guy. So, like the movie studios are just his bank, and he is the ATM card. And he rolls that shit out. All right, let's do some judging. This was a fun topic. Why don't we go? Because it's such a surprise. I hadn't ever heard of this guy. So Carlos Vela, I love learning that. Spinal Tap, Nigel Tufnell, and Vizio Remote.
Yeah,
personified.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and just because he's such a part of history, let's go with John Belushi. So this has been the Mount Rushmore of Mercurial people. I'm always Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.